All right, chicken salad. Guess I do recall probably about a week ago telling y'all we're gonna make some chicken salad, and now you say, well, Rob, when we gonna make the chicken salad? You said we're gonna make the chicken salad. Today's the day. Anywho, reason being was we had to make a few things in the meantime. You gotta get your ingredients together. You gotta get your components doing. And to make the components, that's right, atomistic cooking means we've got to make the stuff that we make to make the stuff that goes in the stuff. So, anyway. Had to make a mayonnaise, had to make a sauce. Did that yesterday. Had to poach some chicken, or actually sous vide some chicken is a better way to put it. And we did that. Well, those are our two basic components. We've got a third, and the third one's our vegetables. So today we're going to chop us up a little bit of celery, a little bit of onion, and throw that in there and mix it together. Now you probably are right now saying, Rob, that's a 5-minute, 10-minute show, right? Yeah, you know me. We're going to go into a few other details, because even when we're chopping vegetables, and even if we're using a food processor, we've still got a couple of things to think about and a couple of things to consider. And we're going to cover that today. No long introductions, no long stories about Julia Child. Love the woman. But no, not today. We need to get right to it. So let's do some cooking. All right, so getting right into it. First thing and foremost we're going to talk about is tools. I always got to talk about your tools, and we're going to do a little bit of chopping today. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. First off, I want to show you something here is you got to get you a decent knife. And when I say a decent knife, I know there's a lot of folks out there that are going to say, yeah, Rob, good chefs always measure by his knives. They carry around those little cases with diamond sharpeners, and they swear by them, and they guard them with their lives, and they're made of carbon steel, and they hold an edge forever and on. Throw all that out the window. Okay? If you're going to be in a kitchen constantly, you're going to want a sharp knife, yes, but you're also going to want something that's easy to sharpen, holds at least a decent edge to where you don't have to sharpen it over and over and over and over again. Also, you want something that's going to hold up and that you can clean real easily, right? That wholesale place we're talking about, remember that wholesale store that's going to remain nameless? These you can get at that place, and you can get a package 2 of these, and down the road when you want to, get you some boning knives and such as that. But the key I'm showing you here is these have these wonderful plastic white handles. Now the key with that really is it feels good in your hand. It feels good in your hand. And when you hold a knife, you're not going to hold it like that. You're not going to hold it like that. You're going to hold it with that finger on the tip and your thumb right there, so you get some good control out of it. But these are good to where you can feel in your, grab a knife, feel if it feels good in your hand. The other thing I want to tell you is, everybody says, never use a mechanical knife sharpener. Don't ever do it, ever do it, ever do it, ever do it. Well, part of that is because when you drag a knife over a mechanical or a motorized knife sharpener, wears the blade down real fast. And what'll happen is a lot of times you'll take your knives, and if you sharpen them like that too much, guess what? That turns into that, and then you got your extra few boning knives because you wore your knives down like crazy. But here's the key. These things are cheap. You know me, I always say cheap, which means that I can afford to sharpen these knives with a motorized sharpener, and I do. This is a great little baby. You drag it once on that side, once on that side, once on that side, once on that side, and you're done. Now, you ain't got to do that all the time. All you got to do is maybe once every, I don't know, 4 or 5 times you use it, or when you really want a good edge on it, like you're going to be cutting some meat or something. And then when you get done, sometimes it might leave just a little bit of metal from that stone. When you clean it, pull it away from you. That's all you got to remember. If you take that thing and bring it in there, a good sharp knife will cut straight through that, but you definitely want to wipe off that blade. That's all we need to know about that. Geez, it ain't that complicated. Just know this. Buy you some knives that are reasonably inexpensive, hold an edge, have a good feel to them, that you can put in the dishwasher. You know, I always say don't put your knives in your dishwasher. Well, that's because a lot of them are made out of carbon steel, and they'll rust, okay? You don't want them to rust. These are stainless steel, so it's not going to rust. The other reason is they usually have, some of them have wooden handles and all. Those wooden handles will warp if you put them in the dishwasher over and over and over again. These have plastic handles, so they're not going to warp in a dishwasher. Plus, if you do wind up with it being damaged at all over time, you're just going to go buy you some more. That's what's important about that. So don't worry so much about it, but just so you know, I do. I use a motorized knife sharpener. Who'd have thunk it, right? Break another thing out. Look at there, just put some of that carbon crap on my cutting board and stuff. Anyway, we're gonna be cleaning that down anyway. Anyway, next thing we gotta do is cutting boards. We gotta have something to cut on because we're gonna be cutting up some vegetables today. Well, you got a lot of different kinds of cutting boards. And I got a few of them right here that I'm gonna show you. And I'm gonna explain to you which ones work, which ones don't, and why they're for what. We're gonna first start out with this big granddaddy right here. All right? You're gonna use one like this. This is what you usually use if you're gonna put, say, meat on it or something like that. You want something that if you're gonna be cutting anything that's really capable of, getting contaminated or, bringing contamination into your kitchen. If you're cutting meats, you want to have a separate cutting board for that. That's what this is for. Now this, just slide over that countertop. The way you keep that from happening is throw you down a towel. A lot of people say you got to wet it. You don't really have to wet it because even a regular dry towel down there is still going to give you a good firm surface. So that's what that is. Now the problem with this one is I like it if I need to cut up something really big, but I can only wash that by hand. And when I'm doing something that I'm worried a little bit about contamination down the road, I'd rather put it in the dishwasher. And this one just doesn't quite fit in my dishwasher. So that one's out. Let's go with something a little bit smaller. This one I've had for a long, long time. I like it. It's got this little groove around it. It'll catch a little bit of the juices. I'll tell you right now though, if you're cutting up something with some juice in it, that little groove ain't gonna catch enough to really worry with. But other than that, it's a decent kind of size. And what I do like about this one is it has the same kind of an application to where it's a plastic one. And you can. This one you can fit in the dishwasher. Barely. It just does fit on the edge. So when I slide it in there, it doesn't take up any space. I'll use this one most of the time whenever I'm cutting up something. And I don't need something that big. But again, it has its drawbacks. For one thing, it's not flexible. When I say flexible, I don't mean flexible in the sense of what I can do with it. I mean truly flexible. So that one's out for today. Okay, and we're not going to need that. So, now we're down to these. These are the ones I really like. Oh, just a little something on there. Anyway, these are flexible cutting mats, okay? Now you do need something. Don't ever cut on your countertop. For one thing, you'll scar up your countertop. But another thing is that's a very, very hard surface, okay? And when you're cutting through, food is generally pretty soft. But once you get through the food and you get down to a countertop, if you cut on like a granite countertop or something like that, guess what you're doing? You are dulling the heck out of that knife because once it gets through the food and meets down that countertop, yeah, it's going to leave a little bit of a groove, but it's also going to impact it to where you're going to dull the edge. You need something that's got at least a little bit of give. So even a little bit of plastic under there. This can get marred up. In fact, you want it to be marred up. If it didn't mar, it means it's probably going to be too hard of a surface. So this one's one that I would normally use for that. The reason I like a flexible mat so much is you can cut on it, do what you want to, and then when you get ready to put off in your food processor, guess what? You can actually fold up what's on there and then dump it in, come right back for more. These are really handy dandy. Plus you pop them in the dishwasher and inexpensive. Good gosh, probably should have replaced this one a while back, but we're not using that one either. And the reason we're not is because I'm only cutting up a little bit of vegetables today. Not hardly nothing. So what I'm going to be using is this little baby. Again, a flexible mat, great application, small, but still pliable to where I can pick it up if I need to like that. And then I can put my vegetables in if that's what I want to do. And I'll show you how it's going to work today because that is exactly what we're going to be doing today. Now, I got my handy dandy spatula, but he's coming in a little bit later on. First off, about our vegetables. This is the end of a piece of celery. I'm going to do the celery first today, and I'm probably going to need a little bit of waste and stuff here. So let's get our scale over here. Forgot to put that out. Anyway, we're going to weigh us our celery. You notice I'm getting kind of down to the end of that. Now, part of the reason I did this was to let you know, don't throw stuff away if you ain't got to. I just took this, put it in a little Ziploc bag. That way I can hang on to it even after I've cut a lot of that celery stalk down. Now, a lot of people, they'll buy celery hearts or such as that because they say, I don't want that dirty end, Rob. I don't want none of that stuff on me. Well, guess what? What's beautiful about this is that it's all in one place. Now, I know a lot of people say, you got to open that up. You got to wash it all out. Let me tell you something. The inside of that celery is not dirty every now and then, depending on where your celery is grown, you'll pull off a few stalks and you'll find some dirty in there, okay? Watch it. Whenever you cut it off, look at it. See if it needs cleaning, because for the most part, most of your vegetables that come from the supermarket are pretty dang clean, with a few exceptions, well, mind you, but celery is not necessarily one of them. Now, here's one of the things today. We're looking at making a chicken salad with 2 pounds of poached chicken from what we made before. And we had a little bit over 2 pounds from what we made out of that 4.15 pounds, as you recall. In fact, we had 2 pounds and 4 ounces, which is 2.25 pounds. I did mistake before, by the way, just corrected myself. I said 1.5 pounds. Well, obviously, 42 ounces is not 1.5 pounds, okay? That's 32. I correct myself again, 32 plus 8, which would be 2.5 pounds. So we're looking at using 2 pounds of that. For every pound of chicken we're going to put in our chicken salad, we're probably going to need about 3 ounces of onion and about 3 ounces of celery. So total, we're going to need 6 ounces of celery. I don't know for sure if I can get 6 ounces of celery out of that or not. But I'm not going to throw that out the door and go all the way down to the supermarket for a bunch of celery, for just one bunch of celery, when I think I can make it with that. Let's see. We don't know. Remember our tear weight scale? Got it right here. Ready to go. Put that on there. Zero it out. Good. Boom! And we're zero. Next, since this celery was cut just a little while back, it's not that bad. You see that? Just a tiny little bit of browning. But every time I want to do that, all I'm going to do is cut off the very end of that. Okay? That way I get a nice clean start. There's another thing I'm going to do. Kept me a little grocery bag over here. The reason for that is so that's where I'm going to put whatever I cut off. Okay? Now normally I'd put refuse and stuff I throw away, I'd put it in a Ziploc bag before I put it in the garbage. But this is vegetables, and by the way, that's a decent plastic bag. When I get done, I'm going to tie that baby up. It's going to work just as good. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut off some 1-inch sections off of this. Not a lot, just a little bit. And there you go. See that right there? I'm going to look at my celery. Where is he? Where is he? There he is. See, just a little bit on there. I'm going to look at the rest of my celery. This is not looking pretty good. A little bit right there. A little bit right there. Again, like I said, I am stretching this celery, but the rest of that looks good. Drop that in there and see about how much we got. Now that's only 2.7. 2.7. So let's see about getting down to the nub on that. So let's go about that far. It's about as far as we're going to get on that. Rest of that, see? That looks good. That's good looking stuff. A little bit right there. Throw it in there. So we only got 5.3. That's close though. That's pretty close. That last nub, that's about as far as we're going to be able to take that celery. Now normally I'd be chopping off the top, and I'd be getting some pretty good, green, lively celery. But I could still use that. It ain't going to hurt nothing. And now that I know I'm at 5.2, now I'm going to get into my onions. Now when you do an onion, and I know there's about 100 different ways to cut up an onion. But I take them on both ends, and then cut them along the edge. And then I'm going to peel off as much of that onion as I need to, which in this case I'm probably going to have to go about a layer or two down, because you see, my onions, I store my onions in the bag. I'm going to there's a picture I'm going to flash up in this video to let you know. I store my onions in the laundry room. Why? Because it's dark in there. You don't want your onions just put in the light very much. You do want to keep them out in the regular temperature though. They don't need to go in the fridge. Nothing else, they'll stink up your fridge. You don't want that. So I'm throwing away whatever's coming off that onion. But I store mine in the laundry room, and I hang them. I hang them up in the bag. If you ever notice that bag, if you get a sack of onions at the grocery store, you get them in that bag, and it's a mesh bag. That lets all the air flow through there. Well, if you take that same bag of onions and you lay them down on a flat surface, and I don't care where it is, it could be in a dark cabinet, it can be somewhere else, but the surface of the onion that's sitting down on that flat surface, even through the bag, that's not allowing the air to flow around your onions. And that's why your onions get spots on them, and that's why they start to develop mold, and that's why they'll start to rot on you. Once you get a weak spot on a vegetable. That's where your rot begins. It gives a place for that bacteria to start in, and once it gets going, it can just take over quick. I got a sack of onions, the same sack of onions, and I'm going to put a picture in there for you. They've been sitting in that laundry room for at least 2.5 months. Oh man, they'll store great. Store a long, long time than you think they will. Ask your grandmama. If you ever want to know, ask your grandparents about this kind of stuff, because they learned how to keep vegetables through an entire winter. They didn't have the store right down the street to go and get stuff. All right, I'm going to take that end of it off of there. And basically all I'm doing is I'm peeling this onion down until I get him nice down to the white. The outer edges, you're going to see a little bit of stuff on him, okay? If you see that on an onion that's starting on the outer edge, but not a rotten spot, but starting on the outer edge, it's just the top layer. Peel that off, the onion's going to be just fine. So don't think you got to go down and buy onions once a week at the regular grocery store. Go to that no-name supermarket, no-name wholesale place, get you a sack of them, just learn how to keep them. And when you get done pulling the skin off of these things, watch for these little flakes. That little piece of peel right there, you want every bit of that completely cleaned up as well as you can, because if you leave any of that laying around, it's going to stick to your onion. And in fact, put this here to the side, it's a good idea right about now. Go ahead, wash off that cutting sheet, because if there's anything sticking to it, you try to pick all that off, it's a heck of a lot easier just to rinse it off. Now, we knew that we had 5.3. I know I want 6 ounces each of my onions and my celery, but guess what? Honestly, there ain't a ton of difference between onion and celery. Celery's got a slightly different flavor, but the texture's about the same. Very similar vegetable. So let's think about it this way. If I've only got about 5 ounces of celery, I'm going to put in 7 ounces of onion. That way I still got the same amount. See that little bitty pit? There you go. Little bitty bit of that peel. That way I get enough. Now, here's my key. I'm going to take this baby, I'm going to put it down the middle. Now, I know I need 7 ounces of onion. So I'm going to put that half in there and just see how much it is. That's 8.8 total. Remember? And I'm looking for 6 total. Let's cut him in half. Let's see where that leaves us. That's 7 total. Actually, wait a minute. I'm screwing up. I need to be in 6 ounces of each. That's 5.2. I'm going to 12. So that's 7. That's 8. Let's see how much we got here. That's 10. Yeah, I don't want to leave off. 12.3. Looks good to me. Now, here's the key. Most all this before we put in the food processor, we want to make sure that it's about the same size. So the chunks of that celery need to be about the same size as these chunks of these onions. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to quarter them. In reality, this is turning into 1/8 of the whole onion that we started with. But I don't want big chunks going in my food processor. I want it to at least be down inch across type size. There we go. So now the key now is we've got a little bit of that. No, that's not bad. There we go. So now we got 12 ounces of our vegetables. And we're just about ready to go to the next stage. The next stage we're going to do is we're going to pull out our handy dandy food processor again. Remember that. I'm going to move them over here, get them where we can see. Got about just enough space where we can see what we're doing here. Now, I'm going to take that 12 ounces and it's all going in there. All right, so now we got that ready to go. And if you recall before, I told you, when you got big stuff in your food processor, you want to make sure and let the bigger chunks fall down to the bottom and re-chop it. So you want to pulse it. That's why you pulse a food processor. The only reason you would leave it on constantly is if you're trying to blend or you're trying to reduce something down to absolute applesauce consistency. We don't want that. We want this to have at least a little bit of integrity to the vegetables. We want them each to have a little bit of chunkiness because they're going in our chicken salad. So now first we're going to put the pulse to it. So, and let the thing come all the way to a stop. You can look to the top there. Yep, that's about right. Now let me show you what we did. We could have spent a freaking half an hour. Well, if you're fast and good, like some French chef, you could probably do it up in 5 minutes. But we could have gone to a heck of a lot of trouble trying to dice and fine cut that onion and cross section and all that kind of stuff. Look at that. Are you kidding me? It's done. D-U-double-E, done. So why in the world would I go to all that kind of trouble? If people tell you that a food processor is cutting corners, or a food processor is, a chicken's way out or whatever, well, give me the chicken's way out. We are making chicken salad. But I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with that every single time, man. So, here we go. We got that. Now, I'd saved one of these little bags because if you had a piece of that onion left over, what would you do? You would take it, you'd put it in a Ziploc bag, take the top of it, put it in the fridge. Don't throw that onion out. You went to the trouble of peeling them. You might as well hang on to it. But I don't have any vegetables left. But what's so cool about it is, guess what? I don't have any vegetables left. That's right. I used up only what was in there. Didn't have to go to the store. Didn't have to get nothing. Very proud of that, actually. So we're going to leave those in here because we're going to weigh the rest of the stuff that we're going to be putting in our chicken salad. So let's clean up our countertop a little bit, put away a couple of things we don't need because we're done with our food processor. Yeah, I said all we're going to do is chop vegetables, and we've chopped our vegetables. So now we can clean this up a little bit, and we'll come back and we'll put the rest of it together. All right, and we're back. All right, we cleaned off our work surface real good, washed our hands very, very clean because we're going to be handling food at this point. Specifically, we'll be handling our chicken. Remember that chicken we made? Burned up nice in the fridge. Got that? We know we got a little over 2 pounds in there, so we know we got 2 pounds for our chicken salad. This is where our previous prep comes in so handy dandy, man. Hang on, just let me grab this real quick like we got about that. Need a second one of these. Need a second one of those. Now, what we're gonna do first, put that in there so it stays nice and clean. This was that leftover sauce that we started with. Remember that we had leftover when we made the sauce for the chicken salad, and I put it in this container. Put it in the fridge, sealed up. Been in there for a while. Not a while, 2 days, actually 1 day. But it's been in there. It's already been pre-prepared. First off, we're going to start off here and we look and we see that our container, completely empty, which is identical to the one I had, it's set at 0 because we zeroed it out before. Now, put that on there. We're starting out with 5.8 ounces of our sauce, which is basically our mayonnaise salad dressing, remember? This is actually closer to a remoulade, like I said, because we got a little extra mustard in there, but I like mine with mustard. So anyway, I'm going to round that out. Or the squeeze bottle, remember? I'm going to round that out now to right at 8 ounces. 8 ounces is a cup. Because you're going to need right at about a ½ an ounce per pound to get a good consistency. It goes anywhere from 1 cup of our salad dressing that goes into 2 pounds of chicken, all the way up to a cup and a half. So we're going to start off with the cup. Now here's the reason we're going to do that. We don't know exactly how much of that salad dressing, that mayonnaise base, that we're going to need. Well, how not, Rob? You said everything's supposed to be exact. I did say that, didn't I? But here's the point. When you make chicken, or when you roast chicken, or when you poach chicken, or when you cook it, in the end, it all depends on how dry your chicken is. We want our chicken as dry as we can get it. Now, the reason that this chicken is going to be nice and dry, and when I say dry, I don't mean not juicy. I mean that you don't want excess water that's going to flow off into our sauce, thin it down, and water our chicken salad. It needs to have mostly fat. In fact, it wants to be all fat if we could help it, but we got a little bit of lemon juice in there. So that right there means that we want to make sure that it's as fat as it can be, so when we put it in the fridge, it tackies up and it firms together. You don't want a runny chicken salad. Nobody likes a runny chicken salad. So, depending on how dry our chicken is, in a way, will depend on how much sauce we need on it. Well, this right here, probably going to turn out pretty dang good. I'm just telling you right now. But it might need a little more than 8. It's going to be anywhere from 8 ounces to 12 ounces of our salad dressing that we made, pre-made before. This is the other reason this is so good. If you were making a chicken salad from scratch and trying to do this, you would put in a little bit of mayonnaise. And then you say, it might not be enough, so I'll put a little bit more. And then you might say, well, then I'm going to put a little bit of mustard. Now I put in more mayonnaise, I got to put in more money. You're going to sit there and go back and forth and stir and do all this stuff, slowly tweaking it until you get it right, correct? Wouldn't it be good if you just had everything in the proportions before you started? Method to the madness, method to the madness. That's the reason we're doing it that way. This way also, with our squeeze bottle on the side and that in there, we're starting out with 8 ounces because we know we're going to need 8. We know we need 8. But we could go up as high as maybe 12. And so what we'll do is we'll start with 8. We'll put all of our stuff together. If it's not quite enough, if it seems a little bit dry, then we're going to add another 2 ounces in there. See how that does. And if that's not quite enough, then we'll add another ounce so we can fine tune what we're doing here. And the time I talk, it's already gone back down. Excuse me, my scale zeroed back out. So now back, we're zeroed out. We know that we need 2 pounds of chicken. We've got pristine, clean hands. Let's get to it. So 2 pounds means we're going to break that up a little bit. And into there, we're just going to put our chicken. And we're going to crumble it up as we go. So make sure that you get it in there. We're going to 32 ounces on our scale. All right? 32. There's 20, 25, 29.5, 31, and 32.3. That's close enough. Close enough for government work. All right, so we got that in there. Next thing we got to do, we're going to put our vegetables in there. Now, remember that I told you about that blade in there? You got to be careful with these blades. Grab it from the very top. The good thing is we're dealing with vegetables that are chopped, which means when we knock that blade, it's just going to knock right off. So we don't have to worry about cleaning the blade like we normally would. And basically, you could rinse that under the faucet. You don't even have to put that in a dishwasher now. Yesterday, if you remember the video before this, when we were making our sauce, the sauce had a lot of fat in it. Fat gets sticky. Fat gets on everything. We don't have any fat in that food processor today, which means that those are just pure, chopped up, raw vegetables. So when we get done, we're going to be able to rinse that out. It'll be a real easy cleanup job. But we can't get in there and get our vegetables out if that blade's in there. So now, we know exactly how many of these is. This is 12 ounces total of the celery and onion that we're going to put in there. So let's put that on in there. And that's pretty easy to get out. Ain't no dish for a stepper. Heard me say that one plenty of times before. And you know I don't like to waste. Part of the reason I use a spatula like that. So we got all our vegetables in there. Close enough for government work. Now, I think we need only one more thing in here. And it does. It needs one more little thing. That's some capers. Maybe you like capers. Maybe you don't like capers. Doesn't really matter. These are the ones I got. Now, the reason there's no brine in there is because I've been pouring those out, but that's what I got left. And I'm not going to take out maybe, 5, 6, or 9/10 of that and leave the rest. So we're just going to dump those capers in there. That's probably we're going to find out how many there are, but we're going to use them all. All right. Next thing we need, strainer. I'm going to use this one right here. And then, you know what I'm doing here? I'm going to go over to the sink real quick. I'm going to dump those in and rinse them under running water. And the reason I'm rinsing my capers is I'm just getting some of that brine off of there. These can be really briny because they're usually held in a combination of vinegar and salt. Both of those can be tasty in very, very small amounts, but too much of it's going to overpower. We want to taste these capers. So I'm going to take them, dump them in a strainer, and rinse them real quick. And we're back. There's our rinsed capers. Now, I told you we're just going to go ahead and use them all, but we do want to know about how many we're putting in there, just in case we want to total it up for a recipe later. Always remember, when you're adding something into your dish, even if it don't turn out quite right, always write it down. Just write down what's in that one. It may change it later, but if you write down what's in there and it turns out to be phenomenal, gosh, you never want to forget what you put in there. Now, if it turns out bad, you don't want to duplicate it, then fine. But at least you know, did it have too many capers? We'll put a little less next time. Did it have too few? Put a little more next time. But how do you know what's less and what's more if you don't know what you put in there in the first place? The only person I knew that had the brilliance to be able to go completely against what I'm telling you right now was Laurence Olivier. You knew I wasn't going to get through this video without an anecdote. Laurence Olivier one time came off of a set and somebody said, Mr. Olivier, how in the world do you act like that? How can you make those wonderful performances when you're up there? And he says, I know that was one of the best performances I've ever done. And he said, what was it that you did that made it so good? And he goes, I don't have the foggiest idea. Anywho, so we're going to take these in there. Look, we get 43.9. Let's go ahead and zero that baby out. There it is, 0. So now when we dump those in there, we're going to see. That's 3.3. 3.3 ain't bad. In fact, when I make a 2-pound chicken salad, I'm going to go anywhere from about 2 ounces to about 4 ounces of capers. And it just depends. Sometimes it depends on how many capers I got in the jar. So anyway, now we're going to take this and I'm going to show you something that you really need to pay attention to. And that is, how are we going to mix this together? Because as you notice, I put it all into the container that I'm planning to store it in. The sauce is on the bottom. We need to get this homogeneous mix, but that looks like it's completely full, right? Rob, why didn't you put a big bowl out there so that you could work in it like you say that you normally do? Because I don't want to mess up a freaking bowl, okay? So here's the key. Go down in there, and we're going to fold this, which means we're going to go on the side, pull it over, and see how we get just a little bit of that sauce out of the bottom, and then fold it over the top. Now what you're kind of making here, or the method I'm talking about using, I've already got a jumper. Jumper! Anywho, what I'm trying to do kind of here is what you might call almost like a burrito. I'm trying to take that sauce and just fold it over the top of it to get everything with a little bit of sauce on it. That way I know that it's going to start to come together. See how that on the top has got just enough? See those loose capers? I want to get them stuck with just at least a little bit of sauce. So we go all the way in the bottom. This is a folding technique that's going to come in later. Believe it or not, this is the way I do a souffle. So go down in the bottom, pull it to the middle, and just keep coming to the middle. And every time you go over, then cut down. And turn a little bit, go over, cut down. And here's what's so cool about this is you don't turn this. Whatever utensil you're using when you're working with it in food like this, don't turn the utensil. Don't get all contorted and all. Keep the same exact motion going and turn the vessel. Turn the bowl. Turn what you're using. So if I come down and I pull over, and then I turn it in, now I'm going to turn it an eighth of a turn. Do another. See how we almost getting jumpers? But I'm not. I'm getting in there nice and tight, and every now and then I'm jamming in the middle. Now you would sit there when I first started with this, and you would have sworn, you would have said, Rob, there ain't no way you're going to be able to keep all that in that bowl and stir it up. Well, I am. I am. Don't think I won't do it, because I'll do it. I'll do it. You think I won't do it, but I'll do it. Now, as that's coming together, you can see we're getting kind of a little bit tacky, and that's really what I want. But you know what? I can just look at that, and you'll get a feel for it. That's a little bit too dry. You can see how even though we got a lot of our sauce, we got most of it off that bottom. See, there's hardly any sauce that's left on that bottom. We've already turned it into there. So now we know that we need a little bit more. Not a lot, but a little. So I'm going to take my handy dandy scale again. I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to leave that spatula in there. If I pull the spatula out of there, well, where am I going to put it? Where am I going to put it? You might say, well, Rob, get you a dish, get you a spoon rest, get you somewhere to lay down your spatula so that you don't have to worry about it. That's just one more thing to clean. And if I leave it in there and I zero it down, it's going to be the same difference. Look at that. So I'm at 0. Remember my squeeze bottle. Told you, squeeze bottle's the way to go. So we're going to go in there. And yeah, I think it's going to take about 2 more ounces. I'm thinking 2 more ounces. That's 1.3, 1.4, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 9, and freeze! All right. Now, got me a little bit more in there. I'll fold that in. Now see how that's coming together a little better? Just a little bit better. It just needed that little bit more. But here's the key. I started out with 8 because I know I'm going to need 8. I know 8 ounces is what I'm going to need, at least. But I knew I was probably going to need a little more. And I said, well, if you knew you were going to need a little more, Rob, why in the world didn't you just go ahead and put it in there to begin with? Because you can. You can always put more in, but you can't take it out. Lord, that's the most important thing in the world to learn in the kitchen. Man, ain't nothing worse in the world and to be sitting there making you a big old 6-quart pot of gumbo. I mean, good stuff. And then you dump in a little bit of pepper. And you know, a 6-quart bowl of pot of gumbo takes about a tablespoon of pepper. Okay? But here's the deal. When I make that pepper and I grind it up the way I showed you before, and I put it in there, pepper blooms. And I said blooms. I never heard of anything about blooming. Flowers bloom. No, spices bloom too. And pepper's one of them. Salt doesn't because it's inert. It goes in and stays the same. It just dissolves. But pepper has those volatile compounds in it. So when you put pepper in a dish, you really kind of wait about 5 minutes or so, at least. Put a little heat to it, because that pepper is going to get stronger. It's going to get stronger. If anybody knows, you know, you make some dishes, you can put them in the fridge overnight. The next day, they'll actually taste better, so to speak. That's because some of those flavors in there are melded together. It takes time sometimes for things to work. So what's going to happen if you put a tablespoon of pepper in your gumbo, stir it up, taste it, and say, that doesn't have enough pepper. And then you dump another half a tablespoon in there. What's going to happen? Huh? It's going to bloom, and then your gumbo is going to be messed up because you put too much pepper in it. There, I said it. And I've done it. Don't think I ain't done it, because I've done it. But my point being is, put a little in, and then wait, see how it does, and then put a little more, and put a little more. And be careful as you put a little more in there, because you can always add, but you can't take away. So that's why we're doing it that way. That's why we're putting that extra ounce. Now look at that. Is that a thing of beauty or what? Now here's the deal. I'm probably going to take this chicken salad and I'm probably going to put it in the fridge overnight, and it's probably going to soak up a little bit of this, and that may very well get drier than I want it to, and it might need a little bit more. Might. But I'm at a point right now that I'm not willing to risk that. I think this is going to come together just fine. Plus, if you look at it, our chicken, because we pulled it out of the hot sous vide, and because we let it sit in the juices to absorb as much that it would hold, it's going to be juicy, tender chicken. But because we worked with it when it was still warm, before it got too cold, and we pulled it out and worked it with our fingers, and it was still warm, it evaporated any of the water that was on the outside of it. So that chicken was nice and dry before we put it in. When I say dry, it wasn't wet. It didn't have a whole lot of extra water on it. Sometimes you're going to find that you're going to make chicken salad, or you're going to do something like that, and there's going to be too much water in what you did. I've done it. And that's just because sometimes things are different. Now this will help you to avoid a lot of that, because we were very, very careful as just how much of that dressing we put in there to make sure we didn't over dress the salad. But every now and then you'll get in there, especially on the tail end, and if you sweep that to the side, you'll see just a little bit of water down in there in the fridge. And when you get down to the last bit, sometimes it'll be too wet. I'm going to give you a tip here. And you may disagree with me. If you want to disagree with me, you can. But the inside of your refrigerator is as dry as a desert. It really, really is. That's why if you leave like a tortilla, like soft tortillas out or anything out in there, it'll dry them out fast. Now you might say, but Rob, it's cold in there. How could it be drying them out if it's so cold in the fridge? Well, when your refrigerator is just a very, very compact version of an air conditioner. So the same process that it's using to cool that air down by oscillating it back and forth using compression, it's drying it out. It's actually withdrawing water from it. It's not as much as your air conditioner, and it all drips down in a pan underneath your refrigerator, but it drips down so slow that it evaporates into your house. So it doesn't need a drain that pulls away water like you would with an air conditioner. But it does pull water out of your food. And for that reason, if you took that right now, let's just say right now that was a little too wet. And when I say wet, I don't mean from fat, I mean from water. But if it's a little too wet, take that and put it in the refrigerator and leave it uncovered. Okay, everybody out there is going to debate me, and I'm going to tell you why that this makes sense. You might say, but Rob, man, if you leave that uncovered in the fridge, man, it's gonna get contaminated, and there's gonna be all kind of stuff that's gonna get on it. I'm only talking about overnight, number one. Number two, I can see that you might be a little concerned if this were a really, really strong smelling dish. And we got a few onions in there, and it might get into something that's in your refrigerator, like vegetables or something like that, and give them a funky smell or a funky taste. I'm not worried about that. Everything that's in my fridge, with the exception of this, is sealed up tight as a drum, which means none of the air that's in my fridge is getting in that food. Everything else is sealed. So if I leave one thing open in my fridge, I'm using the drying action of my refrigerator to take out just a little bit of that moisture. I wouldn't leave it in there too long because it will dry it out, but that's the point. It's going to dry it out a little bit, which means that if it's too wet, and this applies to everything, but if it's too wet the night before, go ahead, put it in there, leave it overnight, and then when you come back in the morning, refold it. When you refold it, it's going to make sure that it's going to be more uniform, and it's going to be not as wet. The fat can't evaporate. Oil doesn't evaporate. Fat doesn't evaporate. Water evaporates. So any of the water that's in that lemon juice, sometimes that lemon juice, because we're using bottled lemon juice, which means we have to use a little bit more bottled lemon juice than we use normal lemon juice. Every now and then, the water that you're adding to a dish, even if it's in other parts of the components, will make it a little bit wet. But don't worry. I know you don't want to take that to dinner on the ground. If you took that to dinner on the ground, everybody at the church would talk about you. You don't want folks talking about you at the church. So what you want to do is just put it in the fridge, leave it uncovered, maybe even only a couple of hours, and go back in there and check it, and take that spatula, run it through, see how it does. But look at how this is. See that? That is perfect. Now, I'm going to check that a little bit later on after it has a chance to sit in the fridge and all that stuff gets a chance to meld together. But right now, that is perfect. It's going to go on a sandwich like you wouldn't believe. And we only used up that much, which means we probably got, I got 3 more batches worth in there, man. And I make chicken salad day and night in the summertime because I love this stuff. And if you get tired of chicken salad, man, do the same thing with shrimp. Maybe even, if you want to, boil you some potatoes. Put you some potatoes in there, make it a potato salad. And you say, well, Rob, it needs other stuff to make a potato salad, or it needs different stuff to make a shrimp salad. That's why this is such a basic sauce. This is basic, basic, basic. I don't know of hardly a single mayonnaise-based sauce that I'm going to make that's not going to have some mustard, some lemon juice, and some pepper. That's why I made it that way. I made it as basic and as simple as you can so that you can add stuff to it. Remember, we can add, but we can never take away. So that's all nice and firmed up. I don't think it needs to be dried at all. I think that's about as perfect consistency as you can get. So I'm going to take that lid, put it back on there, and remember, it's the same container that I used when I had the excess sauce that I had. I ain't even messed up a container. The only thing I got to do in this whole operation is wash off a spatula, rinse off a knife, and rinse out a food processor. Hell, I don't even have to run the dishwasher. I don't have to get in the sink. I don't have to do nothing. Now, right now, given the fact that I don't have anything to wash, do you see why I didn't put a spoon rest out there? Do you see why I didn't just grab me another one? Think in a way, if you can think ahead and be smart in the kitchen before you run around and grab 20 different pots, pans, everything you can think of, trying to transfer this to that and transfer that over there. If you think ahead and do it the same way every time, once you know what works, you're going to save yourself a ton of effort. Look at this. There's nothing. Now, I know we made the chicken ahead of time. We made the sauce ahead of time. But that's the other thing that's beautiful about this process. I know I'm drowning on, but this is important stuff. This is nothing about this process. You can do all these different steps ahead of time. When I make a gumbo, man, I mean, I've got about 10 different things I'm going to go through to make a gumbo. If I tried to do them all in one day, I'd be woe out. I would be woe ass out. So what I do is, one day, I'll cook my chickens. I'll roast me some whole chickens. I'll debone them, throw them in a stock pot, put a little pressure to it, and then I'll even let that sit in the pot overnight. Why? Because I heated it up nice and hot. I didn't take the lid off of it. I'll even keep it on a keep warm setting, but I'll leave that overnight, and then I'll bring it back up to temp the next day before I make my stock, because it's a lot of work to roast 2 whole chickens and debone 2 whole chickens and all that in one day, and by that time I'm not ready to make stock. So the next day I'll make my stock. Then I'll have my stock put away. I'll have my chicken put away. I'll have everything set, and then I'm going to take off for a week or so because I need my cooking in little spurts. I ain't doing it all in one day, not if I don't have to. So we sous vide'd one day, we made sauce one day, and now we made chicken salad one day. Now that's part of the reason when I break those down, you say, well, Rob, why do you do 3 different shows? Why didn't you just show us all how to do it from the beginning? Well, number one, it would have been a 3-hour show. But number two, I'm showing you how you need to break things down. Make it manageable. If you're not having fun in a kitchen, you ain't doing it right. You ain't doing it right. The only time you should be tired and wore out from cooking is on Thanksgiving. And that's only if you're making dinner for 6 people. I get a little tired after a dinner party, I'll give you that. But who the heck throws dinner parties anymore? I do. But that's just me. But at the same time, when I'm making dishes for myself, or I'm trying out a new recipe, or I'm working in the kitchen for myself, I'm only going to do as much as I want to, as much as I like, as long as it makes me happy and I'm enjoying it, which means I'm going to break everything down, think ahead of time, and do it in stages. Do it in pieces. Don't get in there and wear yourself out, get yourself in the middle of some 6-hour operation dish, and then realize, number one, you got to finish doing all what you're doing because you can't stop in the middle. And guess what? When you get done, you got a kitchen to clean. So think ahead and make sure that you don't wear yourself out, because the last thing you want to do is take something you love and make it something you hate. That's all I'm going to tell you today. I'm going to put this in the fridge, and I'm going to be chowing down for the rest of the weekend. Whoa, we got some weather moving in. I better watch the radar. Y'all be good now, you hear? Hope you learned something. Woo!